Yes, it is. Sounds of Rage Against the Machine. I wouldn't say ironic because it isn't. A very fitting end to that particular section. The moral of the story is, guys, it's only a game. The idea is to have fun. It's not to spend your entire life whinging at a faceless corporation who is not going to give you anything, so don't bother. Really, let's be realistic here. Anyway, shout out goes out to Tech Lead, who is naturally very busy at the moment, so my heart and prayers go out to him as he tries to fix the mess of the servers. Right. Several things have come in for working as intended so far, which has asked you... Oh my good lord, more than I thought. Oh, this is going to take a while. Now, the idea of this week's working as intended was... How would you expand the level 60 content for players who cannot necessarily do Molten Core, you know, who may not even be large enough to do Zul'Gurub, but still want to get the Phat loot? So, I've got a few answers for that. I'm going to get on with it. James Turnham comes up with the following answer. They should do stuff like Zul'Gurub with NPCs to help you through. Now that's an interesting idea. That reminds me of Zul'Farrak, the brilliant temple fight scene, one of the best experiences I've ever had in an instance of doing an Alamo style at the top of that temple where they were rushed by wave after wave of enemies and you were helped by NPCs. If you weren't, you'd probably die. And it's not the first and only time you get helped by NPCs. Of course, if you handed the Medallion of Faith on the Strat Baron run, he'll come and help you on the Baron. So, that's an interesting idea, maybe. That is a possibility. Dave Cameron, also known as Jack Daniels, says this. Maybe for endgame material, there should be a certain quest which would be accorded as an epic/raid. This quest would consist of an attack against the player's city, for example. A human takes the quest. Storm would be attacked by like a large army or a huge boss. Right, so what he's saying here is that you could trigger a sort of event as such, and it's then your duty to fight in this event, and there may be a reward. So that's an interesting idea because it rewards people not necessarily for having a large guild, because they can get many guilds involved, whereas when you have things like Molten Core and Black Mullah, you can't necessarily have many guilds involved because there will inevitably be arguments. There's already problems with stuff like the DKP system. I'm going to be talking about this later, Dragon Kill Points, and why a lot of high-end guilds tend to fall to pieces. But this would be a possible solution, yes. Right, a couple more before we get on to Ask the Murloc. Leto. Our very own Leto. Oh, is this Leto? No, it isn't. That's actually Jason Cartledge. Jason Cartledge says this. For the PvP, I would suggest a quest to kill X amount of a certain race. So, a ganking quest, basically. Okay, possibly. For those that prefer the PvE, kill a certain amount of X mob in the instances for Y amount of gold. Okay, maybe. And perhaps a quest which involves several instances. So, say you could 5-man strat, Scolo them all in 12 hours, and get a great reward. The problem with that is that it doesn't really help out the players who can't be on for 12 hours straight. In general, you'll find the players that can be on for 12 hours straight are already in guilds large enough to do Molten Core, and dedicated, not necessarily dedicated enough, but hardcore, quote-unquote, enough to do the content. So, that may not necessarily be the way to go. Leto, our very own Leto, who unfortunately had to stop doing his show, Town Hall, due to school commitments. I mock the education system and all involved in it. The problem will be solved in two different but very meaningful ways. Firstly, the one thing we need to do is to combine together the idea of progressive quests and the small group level 60 instance. I.e., you have quests that build upon each other and can only be accessed that way, and you have instances that use the latter part of those sets of quests, meaning that you can have these medium, small 10-people group instances that when you do the instance, when you just do the instance itself is not great, but when you do the quests for it and get up to the quests and the instance, you get a much greater bonus for the completion of the quests, and it's a very powerful and elite loot. The second thing that must be changed in order to bridge this gap is to Total Biscuit getting a new intro for working as intended. A new intro? It's working, yeah, it's working as intended, baby. What's wrong with that? Bloody hell. Anyway, yes, an interesting idea. So there's many more ideas coming in. I will be reading them out later in the show. If you are interested in getting your collective heads together for this week's Working As Intended, email themurloc@gmail.com. The subject is, of course, level 60 content for those who can't or won't do 40-man raid instances. How can you bridge the gap? How can you create equality without sacrificing the difficulty level? Right. I think it's time for a much-loved and much-maligned feature on Blue Please, known as
Ask the Murloc.
Yes. Those who've tuned in before know exactly what this is. Those who haven't tuned in, and by the looks of the listener numbers we're getting here, that's quite a lot of people who've not tuned in before, who may not know what Blue Please is all about. The Murloc is a lonely soul, but a very malicious one. The Murloc has evolved. The Murloc is now upper class and very cynical, and he doesn't like you very much. Especially not when you send him stupid questions. Which is exactly what people have done in this segment of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and only Ask the Murloc.
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, how the hell do you take screenshots? Looked everywhere in the manual, and I couldn't find it.
Cower in fear, foolish mortals, but it's I, the Murloc. Ha ha! Come to take your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. Well, my young lady, perceive that you're living in some crazed, drug-induced fantasy world. We do not possess anywhere near the required technology to capture a still image with a push of a button. What a ludicrous suggestion. That's the problem with young people of today. Their hippity-hop and their marijuana are making them crazy and stupid. Even if the technology were invented to create these still images, it is clear that the use of such sorcery is satanic in nature. To have an exact image is something you must own its soul. You cannot own the soul of a soulless machine. It's madness, foolery, total and complete codswallop. Go back to your crazy drugs, you foolish girl. Stop wasting my time. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, I want to ask, is it normal my magics are very slow? Why when I start magic I must wait 6 to 7 seconds? Is that normal?
Normal? Normal? No, of course it's not normal, you snivelling peasant. It's because you truly suck sore. Ha ha! Your skill is nowhere near the required level to play with the Murloc. You are pawns of your face. Do everyone a favour and take your ugly self elsewhere. Perhaps you could play a paladin instead. That should be more suitable to your worthless demeanour and pitiful mind. Why, such an ignorant fool as yourself isn't even worthy to clean the Murloc's lavatory. Perhaps you could do yourself a favour. Or maybe I could do you a favour instead and end your suffering right now with my trusty crossbow. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Dear Murloc, can you tell me the best class to play? I was thinking of starting a warlock.
The Warlock? Don't be ridiculous, you silly little man. No one plays a Warlock. No. You should clearly be playing a Shadow Mage or a Holy Warrior. I personally have a Shadow Mage with an Arcanite Reaper, dual wielded with Perdition's Blade, and I truly pose all the news with it. The truth of the matter is, my boy, that a class is defined by who plays it and whether or not they can play it in the manner it was intended, rather than which class is better overall. That is the Murloc's wisdom for the day. Now get out of this place, you grovelling and worthy swine, before I eat your faces. Ha ha!
Ask the Murloc.
Oh dear. The Murloc is in a very unpleasant mood, but that's not really anything unusual. Anyway, that was, of course, this week's Ask the Murloc. If you want to send in questions for the Murloc, you can do so. themurloc@gmail.com. That is themurloc@gmail.com. Right, back on to what we were supposedly doing. Now, we've had 30 minutes of doom and gloom in the form of, well, the server's broken, everything's going horribly wrong, we're all going to die. So, I want to change things to a more happy note, more upbeat and interesting note. Now, many of you have probably realised by this point that I'm the geek incarnate. Total and complete geek nerd, self-confessed and bloody proud of it. When I was younger, I used to play Warhammer, I used to play Magic the Gathering, I used to play everything that all the geeks and the unpopular people play. Now, I haven't changed very much, except I go out a lot and get drunk with friends. You know, I disguise my geekiness. Or, in fact, when I get drunk, I just say geeky things to people and it scares them. It's fantastic. However, I always had a great love of things like battle games and board games. It also goes back to the old pen and paper RPGs, the role-play games, the Dungeons & Dragons, Middle-earth role-playing and that kind of thing. And I used to love that. It was great. And I sort of regret not playing enough of them. Especially as that was the time when it was acceptable to play them as a kid. Now it's not really socially acceptable. But then again, when have I ever cared about that? It's not socially acceptable to do a radio show about a bloody video game either. Like that's ever bothered me. However, with this whole downtime issue, and combined with the fact that Blizzard is releasing a card game through Upper Deck, which is supposedly a trading card company of some description, I thought, WoW board game. Why not? I originally wanted to do another card game, something reasonably amusing, and have things like server crashes and ganks and OMFG hacks cards and stuff like that. I thought, well, actually, no, this is going to work better as a board game. So I got a few guys together from WoW Radio, and we've decided to start working on it. It's going to be a free board game. You're going to be able to print this out, all the cards, the board, etc. Print it out, mount it onto card if you so wish, and play it with your friends. So when the servers go down, you'll have something to do. And the title of this board game is Phat Lewt, because that's what it's about. It's based on a game called Talisman, which some of you may have played and some of you may have not. It was one of the best board games I've ever played. It was like a role-playing game crossed with a board game, and the idea was you beat up the big dragon in the middle and you get the Crown of Command. So I thought, hang on, this sounds quite a bit like World of Warcraft, where our ultimate aim so far is to beat up the big dragon, the Nefarian, and get the Phat Lewt. Yeah, an idea did form, and we've been developing this for the past couple of days, and we've come up with some good stuff. If you go on the WoW Radio forums, that's wcradio.com, and click the forums button, I have a little thread about this, and you can see our efforts so far, including a draft board, and the board is looking quite good so far. Thanks to Dogmata for creating that one. It is looking very good. Now, for those interested in the game, the way it's going to work is you get a character, right? There's going to be the availability of 9 players here. We're going to try and make it so that 9 players can play this game, although it could be a little bit tricky to get that many people around to play it, but never mind. The characters are going to be available, and each character is going to start with 3 or 4 skills. Popular skills from World of Warcraft. So if you've got a warrior, they'll start maybe with Hamstring, Heroic Strike, Ren, that kind of thing. So, what do you do? The idea is you've got to beat the snot out of Nefarian, who is in the middle of the board. You can't get Nefarian yet, though. No. You can't go straight there. You've got to get 5 pieces of the key. Now, I know that's not accurate. You don't need 5 pieces of a key to get into Blackwing Lair, but bear with me. There's 5 pieces of a key, and each one will require different objectives. And you'll need gold to forge the key. And you can earn gold by grinding and going into instances. And there's going to be instances around the board. So, you roll your dice. You roll a 3 or whatever. You move 3 squares. You land on an instance. Now, you can go into that instance. And what there's going to be a set of encounters. Well, I'm working on streamlining this system at the moment because, quite frankly, it's a little bit too long. But the idea is you beat the encounter and you get Phat Lewt. And these are going to be in the form of cards. Now, each card is going to have a selection of things on it, just like a quest would. You're going to be able to pick from things which are appropriate to your class. And they're going to have stats. Now, I'm going to simplify the inventory system. There's going to be... You'll be able to have a weapon, a helmet, a chest piece, a ring, and a trinket. Nothing else. That's just overcomplicated. So you build up your character, and the instances are tiered. There are 5 instances on the board. 2 are tier 1, that's Stratum and Diamol. 2 are tier 2, that is UBRS and Zul'Gurub. And 1 is tier 3, Molten Core. These do not correspond to the tiers in World of Warcraft before anyone even says anything. It's simply a way of dividing the instances up. And if you wipe, you lose gold. There's also going to be a PvP system based on abilities and damage tables and all this sort of stuff. And hopefully the idea is it's going to be a lot of fun. Now I'm going to be taking this to BlizzCon I'm going to make a large prototype board of it with the rules, make it look as nice as possible. I'm taking it to BlizzCon. Anyone here that is going to BlizzCon, I will play it with you when I'm not doing WoW Radio stuff. And yeah, I am going to show it to Blizzard. Whether they like it or not, I won't know. You know, it would be nice to see it printed on some nice cards, you know, with little figures. That would be good. But yes, board games. Board games are fun. And it brings me back to, what is World of Warcraft about? Because the board game is based on the old idea of dungeon crawling. Dungeon crawling is fun. Getting fat loot is fun. Honest, it is. That's the whole point of the role-playing game. To get the treasure, beat the big dragon, save the girl, keep the change, that kind of thing. That's what you want out of a role-playing game. Certainly out of an MMORPG, I would think. There's not that much role-playing as such going on. I think that's one of the weaknesses of World of Warcraft. It's not built for role-playing, it's built for competitive play, which does not harbour role-playing. It doesn't like it. It's like the two sides of this coin that will never see each other. They'll never see eye to eye because, quite frankly, it's almost polar opposites. One is concerned with the character and the way the character evolves, has a storyline, and does his adventures. The other is very clinical. Whereas on a roleplay server you may get a very elaborate way of saying LFG, LBRS. It's the same principle, but on a competitive side of things, it's already LFG, LBRS. Save time, bash through the instances, get the fat loots, that's all we want, blah, blah. Whether or not the enjoyment is there is a different matter. Whether people get the enjoyment out of the fat loots themselves or the instance runs, I do not know. I, for one, enjoy the instance runs. I like the challenge, which is why I want to go into Molten Core. And unfortunately, I've had to leave my guild recently because, well, to be honest, they're not in the state to do it. And I'm not the only one who was displeased with this. And there's been a whole bunch of clashing and arguments, etc., about what we should be doing. Should we just be larking around and having fun? Yeah. But should we also be doing Molten Core? Yeah, we should. And we have the classes to do it. We have about 60 level 60 players. We can do Molten Core, but the guild itself doesn't seem to be able to get its act together. And that's unfortunate. And when it comes to stuff like MMORPGs, I think the big thrill comes in the big challenges. The bigger the boss, the more thrilling it is to take them down. And of course, the bigger reward. That's the carrot dangled in front of people's faces. Fat loots is the reason to do instances. And it's the reason that some of you may have done boring instances like LBRS, in my opinion, which is the dullest instance ever. Makes me want to stab myself in the eye. It's terrible, but is that the carrot being dangled in front of people's faces? And is it Blizzard's fault that perhaps people have lost this idea of fun? The sort of fun that you used to have in board games, where you wouldn't necessarily play for the fat loots. You'd be playing for the fun of playing. You know, those of us adult geeks who can drink would be playing with a couple of beers, having a good time, and those who are kids, you know, getting really thrilled over the concept of this game. Is it simply an evolution that we've evolved beyond this? We get thrills from doing something rather than thrills from the reward that it gives. Is it just a way that modern gamers are? It's interesting to note that in more recent gaming titles, compared to older stuff, you'll often find that there's a lot of unlockable content. It's like people have to seem to dangle this concept in front of people's faces, and that they won't play unless there's something to be had from it, rather than simply saying, well, okay, it's a game I'm playing for fun, rather than it's a game I'm playing to unlock this, you know. Some people play Grand Theft Auto purely to get the 100 secret packages and get their attack helicopter. Some people play it for the sake of playing it, and this has been going on all over the gaming community, you know, this is the way things are going. Kind of saddens me in a way that the challenge is not there. Maybe it is partially the fault of the companies involved. The nature and the essence of an MMORPG is that you have to go and do a location over and over again. Whereas if you take a single-player RPG, you won't be in the same location many times. You do a dungeon, that's it. The guy's dead. In an MMORPG, it comes back as soon as you leave the instance, you know, reset it and go back in. Where's the meaning? Now, meaning I'll be coming on to after the break. But for right now, I need to get myself another drink, because quite frankly, my mouth is drying out and it's not very pleasant. So, speaking of video games, here's a remix of E1M1 from Doom. It's by the Evil Horde. It's called Hangar Mageddon. Enjoy.